My name's Dave W. I also go by ZZ Dave on Zoom, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 7th, 2015. My home group is Midvale Lunch Bunch. We meet at El Farrell 5 days a week. I've got a sponsor. He has a sponsor. I sponsor people. And I've held service positions there at the home group. Chair meetings, been the central office rep for a while, and I take opportunities like this. If somebody wants to listen to me, then I'll talk. So I'm grateful to be here tonight. So I hope I can share something that will be of value to you. And y'all have been helpful keeping me sober tonight, so I appreciate what you've done for me tonight. But I'll share a little bit of my story. It's, my opinion and my experience. It's not. I don't speak for AA, I speak for me. And your experience is going to be different, obviously. There's as many different people, there's different experiences. But I think I started out as, is this okay? I started out as an alcoholic very early. I think I was an alcoholic when I was a kid. I had the obsession of the mind when I was a little kid. Now that I'm sober, I reflect back on my life and say, when did this start? Was it the chicken or the egg? What happened? And I look back as a little kid, and I remember being fascinated with alcohol at a very young age. My parents didn't drink. I came from a good family. We had, we were middle class, so I didn't have that. I didn't have a bad family. I didn't have family drama or trauma. I didn't have big trauma or drama in my life growing up, so I can't attribute that to my alcoholism. So I have to look back at what was the deal. But I think I had the obsession of the mind from an early age. I remember playing at my friend's house across the street. His dad had a bar in the basement. He had beer on tap, and I was fascinated by that. And I don't think, even at a little age, I drank it, but I don't even remember if we tasted it, but I'm just fascinated that he had beer on tap, whatever beer was back then. And he had an old Coors mirror sign that when you turn it on had the rippling water. I thought that was the coolest thing. So my mental obsession was going even then. I remember seeing bottles of wine, a Lancer brand, I think it was, kind of a ceramic bottle. And here I am, I'm 60 years old, and I can remember that as if it was yesterday that I'm looking at that bottle of wine. I didn't know what wine was, but I was fascinated by that. So I think the obsession was there with me at a very early age. I remember as a little kid, and I don't remember, 6, 8 years old. I grew up in American Fork down in Utah County, and it was a small community back then. And me and my elder brother, we'd go down along the railroad tracks between American Fork and Lehigh, and I would pick up liquor bottles. Somebody would throw the liquor bottles out while they were driving. Dumbest thing, I don't know why, but I was fascinated by the liquor bottles. Thunderbird wine or this or that vodka or Black Velvet. I remember Black Velvet to me was the bottle to get. I don't know why. And it would anger my mom that we'd have these liquor bottles in our bedroom stashed away. But I was fascinated with it. So anyway, I think my obsession occurred at a very early age. And I had alcoholic behavior as a kid. And looking back on it, I remember one summer my dad took us to the swimming pool, the veteran swimming pool on one side of town, dropped us off on this hot summer day. He went home to do yard work. And he loved his yards. We loved doing yard work, so he was going to leave us there all day, me and my brothers. And so Dad gets home, and he's only home for a little while, and the lifeguard gives him a call, telling him, Mr. Winters, you've got to come pick up your son. He's been kicked out of the pool. Well, he's not happy. So he gets in his pickup truck, and he drives across town, all the way to the swimming pool, and he comes inside, and there I am, sitting in the lifeguard's office with the lifeguard sitting right there. And my dad asked him, well, what did he do to get kicked out of the swimming pool? And he said, well, Mr. Winters, he was peeing in the pool. My dad looks at me, and looks back at the lifeguard, and he looks back at me, he looks out of the pool, and he looks back at that lifeguard, and he says, peeing in the pool. He says, how many kids do you think are out in that pool today? Lifeguard says, well, I don't know, 30 or 50. 30 or 50 kids in that pool, and you think my son's the only one peeing in that pool? And the lifeguard says, well, no, sir. But he was the only one doing it standing on the diving board. So I think I had alcoholic behavior at a very early age. But I had my first drink when I was 15, and it was just a can of Coors beer. And I like the effect of alcohol. I like that. I only had the one can, and they say you remember your first drink and you remember your last drink. And I remember that as clear as day. I didn't like the flavor of it, but I sure liked the way it made me feel. And again, the mental obsession kicked in. I didn't know about mental obsession, and I didn't understand or know anything about the phenomenon of craving. But I remember seeing the guys drink more than I was drinking, and I've got to get better at this. I'm getting drunk and passing out, or I'm getting drunk and being sick, but I've got to get better at this. Something's wrong with me. I'm not a good drinker like they are. So I spent my teenage years trying to be the best drinker that I could be, and I didn't understand the phenomenon of craving. And when we'd go to a keg or whatever, I couldn't just have a couple of beers and have a good time. I had to drink and drink till I passed out. And then I would, instead of learning from that and thinking, boy, that was stupid, then I would think, well, I've got to do it better. So next time I'm going to eat a peanut butter sandwich and line my stomach, and then I can drink more and I won't get sick. And that didn't work. And I spent a lot of years doing that. And I didn't understand that was obsession of the mind. And, I spent a lot of years drinking, and moving forward from my teenage years, I drank till I was 55. I think that's when I got sober. And that was by the grace of God. And I look back on that, I look at the grace of God in my life in the rearview mirror. I don't see the grace of God when it's occurring, necessarily. But when I look in my rearview mirror, my sponsor told me to look in the rearview and you'll see where God has been. And I look back at 18 months before I got sober. I entered myself into detox at Highland Ridge Hospital. And prior to that, I'd been having withdrawals. I was in the depths of alcoholism. I had to have some help. So I went into Highland Ridge to the detox. And for me, I thought that was the bottom. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, and for me to be in Highland Ridge Hospital, that seemed like lockup. And how did I get here? Well, I know how I got there. I've got a million war stories of how much I drank, when I drank. I was obsessed with alcohol again. Like I said, when I was an officer, I was a new rookie, and I didn't recognize the obsession. But as a new rookie, you go out with the vice cops, and they'd introduce you to how they do their job. And the thing that you could look forward to is they'd buy you a couple beers at the bars that they were doing bar checks on, checking for underage drinkers and whatnot. I didn't care what was on the agenda that night. I knew there was free beer, and I could have as much as I want. And that's all I focused on. I don't know what I learned that night other than I could get beer. And so that was my focus. Going through my career, there were other opportunities where the police academy would train rookies in field sobriety tests. Any of you that have to do this stuff, they have to train on that. Well, they need drunks to do that with. So, pick me. So they picked me on an occasion because they knew I was a trained professional when it came to drinking. And so I would go to these training classes where I'd be the subject. And again, my mental obsession was booze. And my phenomenon of craving would kick in, and I couldn't get enough. This free booze, and they were measured out in the metered 1 ounce shots so they could see how drunk you were going to get. So when they do the test, they know, shit, that wasn't going to work. So I would, I'd hoorah bartender till I'd get doubles and triples. It was just the phenomenon of craving kicked in, and I would drink. Somebody would drive me home, of course. I did that a couple of times in my career, and I just focused on drinking. Everything in my life revolved around drinking. There wasn't an activity I did, whether it was camping, family activities, anything that didn't involve drinking. And if I wasn't drinking, I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and I was thinking about drinking. And it said in the big book, if you control it, you can't enjoy it. If you enjoy it, you can't control it. That was me. And when I got to AA, I listened to different people's stories. Some people drank more than me, some drank less than me. But that commonality of when you drink, you can't control it. When you control it, you can't enjoy it. I was on the same level with them. We come from a different background, maybe. We're people who normally would not mix. But we got the same story as far as alcoholism goes. And, excuse me. So anyway, fast forward, I find myself in detox at Highland Ridge. And I'm promising myself and my wife, this is it. I am done. And I meant it. I meant it with every fiber of my being. And while I was in there, now looking back in the rearview mirror, I recognized the grace of God in my life. We were sitting in there for treatment. Each day they had a group and you had to share your feelings and other BS. And one particular morning, the counselor turns to me and says, "What are you grateful for today?" And I said, "Well, I'm grateful for the chairs outside in the smoking area." "Well, why?" I said, "Well, because they're metal, they've got a grate on them, and I can go out there and I can play like I'm playing my guitar. I play guitar in the mornings as just something I enjoy doing, but there was no guitar when I was in there for the weekend detox. But I could go out there while the guys, the cool kids, were smoking cigarettes, and I could hang out with them, and I could strum on those chairs. Nobody knew what I was doing other than I looked strange strumming on the back of these chairs, singing to myself and playing guitar." And the counselor says, "Well, why don't you play a guitar? We got one." "Well, shoot, bring it on." So she brought it out, and it was missing a string, but I was able to sit amongst these other people detoxing and play for a bit, and then somebody else would play. And the grace of God was the eye-opener for me, was seeing that I can have fun, I can enjoy life with people, and there's no alcohol involved. We're just doing something that we get pleasure from, and joy, sharing it with each other, and there ain't no booze involved. And man, that was an eye-opener for me. Again, I didn't recognize it at that moment. Looking back, I did. So I get out of detox, get into treatment, and of course, I'm an alcoholic. So even though I'm introducing myself to people, "Hi, I'm Dave, I'm an alcoholic," I don't really think so. I might be. I just have a drinking problem. And if I can just control my drinking problem, that's the mental game that's going on with me, is if I can just control it, I know I can go home, have a couple drinks, I can drink like a gentleman, I'll be just fine, this is all BS, I am not an alcoholic. Well, that went on for like 18 months. I was only sober for like 30 days in treatment, right? And then after treatment, then I'm up at a cowboy poetry gathering up in Heber, and by myself, just me and my thoughts, and I thought, "Hey, here's a good idea. Let's go to the liquor store down the road and get a pint. We'll just get a pint, and it'll be a spendy pint, top shelf, because then I'll nurse it, because then I'm not an alcoholic, because I'm not buying off the bottom shelf anymore, I'm buying the good stuff." So I bought me a pint, and I nursed it for a couple of days, pat myself on the head, "What a good drinker you are," And that just spiraled into a disaster down the road. But, I don't think where I was going with that. Anyway, so I started drinking at that cowboy poetry deal. And then I thought, well, I'm going to control it. So I kept controlling it for 18 months. And, the big book tells us that if you don't think you're an alcoholic, go out and try some controlled drinking. Well, I tried controlled drinking, and it was out of control really freaking quick. So the end of that 18 months, I went out to Elko to another cowboy poetry gathering. Of course, drinking on the way out there. And then when I got there, I didn't think I was drinking a lot, but I bought a jug for me and the wife, and the next morning get up and going to have an eye-opener. There's only about that much left. I said, "What happened?" She said, "Well, you drank it all." No. The dog must have got some of it, because I couldn't drink that, but sure enough. And that started the last part of my drinking career, and that was the start of about a month-long blackout. And at the end of that blackout, I recognized God's grace again, because I was really drinking myself to death. About 7 a.m., first part of February of 2017, I'm sitting on the couch at 7 a.m., finishing off the second half-gallon of vodka for the day. And I don't know, other than God's grace, how I was able to form the words to my wife, who, again, had come down and found me on the couch. disgusted at what she's found, drunk again, and I don't know how I found the words to ask her to get me to the LDS hospital detox. But I know that somehow she understood. How she got me in the car, I don't know. I don't have any memory of it. How she got me to the hospital, I have no memory of it. No memory of LDS hospital for about 3 or 4 days, and then just very foggy. Very foggy. So I was pretty good. They said I was 0.45 when I came in, so pretty good. And so that was the grace of God that morning. That was that moment of clarity that they talk about. You know, that moment of clarity that, okay, God's saying, one more chance. Here you go. And so I got out of detox, and I felt like the drowning man reaching for the raft. My daughter picked me up. It was a Friday afternoon. I said, get me to the Midvale Lunch Bunch. She took me right down to my home group. I went in still shaky, told them what had happened. Everybody did what we do in AA, put their arms around me and embraced me back. And I started to, again, it's God's grace that helped me see some of these things. I started to look at what I wasn't doing. I started to listen. You know, in our home group, we read part of chapter 5. That part where it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. Well, I started to hear that. I heard it every time we go to a meeting, but I heard that. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. I wasn't following anybody's path, and I sure wasn't thoroughly doing it. I was following Dave's path, and again, it took me to the depths of hell. So I started to do what I'm supposed to. It's very uncomfortable for me to ask somebody for help. Like I said, I'm a retired cop. I can take care of me. I don't need anybody's help. Yeah, I did. And so I had to suck up that ego and ask somebody to sponsor me. And by grace of God, he did. And so we started working the steps. And I began to recover. And within a few weeks, and again, I'm listening to everything that I'm hearing in the meetings, this time with open ears. And a woman was talking about praying for the obsession to be lifted. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to pray every morning, every night for that obsession to be lifted. And I don't know how many days it was, weeks, I don't know. But the obsession was lifted. And we worked the steps, the obsession continued to be lifted from me. I don't obsess over alcohol anymore. I talk about it when I'm in the groups. I think about it when I'm in the groups because we're talking about alcohol, but other than that, I don't obsess over it anymore. Which, for me, like I said, I started as a little kid obsessing over alcohol. For me not to obsess over alcohol now, that's a miracle. That's a miracle. That's God's grace for me. So, the message that I was mishearing in the meetings, I was hearing people talk about working on the 4th and 5th step. Put the 4th and 5th step on. So I was working my steps. I skipped over 4 and 5. I was working all the rest, so to speak. But, you know, I'm working on them. And I've had sponsees do the same thing. I'm working on my 4th step. And so while I'm spinning my wheels, again, God's grace steps in. I'm at a meeting, and a couple of ladies asked me to speak at a conference up in Park City on my 4th and 5th step. I can't. I said, I can't do that. I haven't done it. Why haven't you done it? Well, me and my sponsor were kind of on hiatus for a little thing, and I said, well, who's your sponsor? He happened to be standing right there. Him. Well, you guys got to get this done. We looked at each other, and nothing we could do except say, okay, we got to get it done. So I told him, let's do it this week. So we sat down. Within a week, we'd done 4th and 5, and bang! That's when the light came on. I could feel it. I that spiritual awakening, that feeling God's grace again. This is it. I understand what this is all about. Now, I'm not an expert at this program, right? Progress, not perfection, but I kind of got it. And a couple days later, I had a guy ask me to sponsor him. Man, what a feeling. What a spiritual feeling that was to sit down with him and start working. And we got to the point where 4 and 5, he did the same thing. I'm not ready. And about 3 days later, he drank himself to death. So that was another point of God's grace for me. It's like, Dave, don't let them spin their wheels. I spun my wheels and I didn't sink, but somebody else might. So when I work with people, we're going to set a date. We're going to set a date. You're going to do your 4th step. We'll get that done. Then here's the date. We're going to do 5. We're going to move through this so you can have a spiritual experience so that you can start working with other people and bring them to recovery. And so, kind of moved on that way. Now, in my big book, I've started writing in the very back page the moments that I have felt or seen God's grace in my life, because I don't want to forget those. And one of those moments of God's grace is about 1 year and 5 days into recovery. I get a phone call from a guy. He's 38 years old, and he says, do you remember so-and-so, this girl from high school? Yeah. Well, she's my mom, and you're my dad. Oh, shit. Well, thank you, Ancestry DNA. Sure enough, we did the DNA. I'm a daddy. I got 2 girls. I didn't know I had a son. I had no clue. And it was a lesson for me in a lot of things, but it was God's grace, because that young man came into my life at a time where I was not a drinker. I was not an alcoholic that was actively ruining my life and going to ruin his too. I was clean and sober. And I could be the father that I never had a chance to be, or he never had a chance to have. He has a good father. He has a very good relationship with his father. Grew up in San Diego, he did. And they have a great relationship. But it was also a lesson for me in amends, because I didn't think I owed this girl an amends up until I knew about my son. And then reflecting back on talking with my sponsor that, hey, I owe her an amends. At 18, we did our thing, and then I broke up with her. And I was an alcoholic, active alcoholic, and using anything else I could get my hands on, because I had the phenomenon of craving. And so if I was drinking, I was doing anything else I could get my hands on. So I was not the person she should hook up with and raise a kid with. So she made the right decision and moved on with her life. And I ended up meeting this young man, like I said, 1 year and 5 days sober. Now I've re-met his mother last summer. We had a birthday party for one of our granddaughters. 2 granddaughters and a grandson all of a sudden. Boom! And I can be a sober grandpa for them, which was freaking awesome. So Christy is her name. She came up from San Diego, and I was able to give her a hug, and we're like old friends. It's just wonderful. And I met her husband, my son's father from San Diego, and he was a little trepidatious about us meeting. He'd raised this boy, and what was the situation going to be? And, I have no animosity. And through AA and working amends, I know that I played a huge role in this. It is my responsibility that this situation occurred the way it did, so I have no animosity. But the dad was a little trepidatious. But he did come out on Memorial Day. We went out with his family, his sons, other sons, and the grandkids and everybody. We went out shooting. We spent a whole day shooting, and they were just like 2 old high school buddies. We'd never met before, but we were like old high school buddies. And now he and his wife are going to come up Easter weekend to a Mountain Man Rendezvous. I go to Mountain Man Rendezvous, which are historical reenactments. They're going to come up and camp with us. He's bought buckskins, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And it's all through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and the grace of God. If I wasn't sober, I know me well enough to know how crappy this situation would have turned out. But it didn't. It's turned out to be a true blessing for everyone involved. And, and I pondered to myself, I thought, why did God wait till this time? Obviously on God's time, not mine. Why did God wait till this time to reveal this to me? And it became clear to me September of this past year. My son and I were going to go hunting for the first time. The day before we're going to leave. And I knew his wife had substance abuse problems, but I didn't know how bad it was. Well, he calls me up the afternoon before we leave, telling me she'd been in a car crash. She passed out behind the wheel. She crashed the van. He's got her home. She's not acting right. What should I do? I said, well, get her to the ER. Something's not right. It sounded like an overdose to me. Well, he gets her to the ER, and as they walk in the door, she crashes. Her heart stops. Down she goes. They're able to do CPR and get her started again. But anyway, so I go to the hospital, and I'm visiting with him and talking with him. So over the course of the night, we're able to talk about recovery, what path I've taken, how AA has helped me, how it might help his wife. Here's some options. over the hunting trip. We had some more time to talk about that kind of thing and plant some seeds that he can maybe help his wife. So I look at that. Maybe that's God's grace. That's why I'm sober today, so that when something like that happens, I've got some words that might be useful to them. So I think that's why God put him in my life at that time. And there's been a couple of others, and I'll share this one moment of God's grace with you. And I'm kind of hesitant to share it because it kind of would weird me out, I think, if somebody else was telling this. But I'm going to tell you this, and it's true. I had a friend, his name was Martin. I worked with him, and he identified himself to me as an alcoholic, but he wasn't ready to get treatment yet. I shared a big book with him and took him to a couple of meetings, and he wasn't really sure what to do. I didn't have a year's sobriety yet, and in my home group, they stress that you got to have a year before you can sponsor somebody, and I know that's fairly common. Agree or disagree with that. But Martin asked me if I'd sponsor him. I said, well, I can't. I don't have enough time. And I continued to invite him to meetings, but he wouldn't come to meetings. He was uncomfortable. And he continued to drink. And just before Christmas a couple of years ago, I had a dream. And again, this will sound strange to you. It's true, gospel truth. I wrote it in my book. It's true. I had a dream, and in that dream I could see his face. And I got a phone call while I could see his face from a lady at work, and she was telling me Martin passed away. And I woke up from that dream. That's all the dream was, nothing more. And I looked at the clock, it was at 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night, so when we got up in the morning, I told the wife about this dream. And I called Martin, and I texted Martin, didn't get anything in return. And me and the wife were going out of town for a couple of days, so I didn't think anything more of it. We left town. And 2 days later, I get a call from this lady from work that I'd had the dream of. So I got something to tell you. Martin passed away. I said, well, he passed away Sunday night about 2 o'clock. How'd you know? Came to me in a dream. Well, why did that occur? I was asking myself, why did that occur? Was that Martin? I don't know. It's God's grace to me, because that was telling me I should have sponsored him. I should have reached out the hand of AA, and had I not sponsored him, I should have put him in touch with somebody who could have worked with him. Everything happens for a reason. It's God's way. Page 417, acceptance. That's just the way it is, and that was his path. But that lit a fire in me that I can't be lazy. I'm not going to sit on my laurels. If I have an opportunity to help someone, the hand of AA to reach out, I am going to do it. So like tonight when Jerry asked me to come talk or speak with you guys, yeah, okay, I'll do it. That's the program. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to do. And so like I said, today, it's the first of this month. I celebrated 5 years, so I got a little time behind me. We just have today. The program talks about a 24-hour program, as you all know. And so for me, it's a program of living each day. It's no longer not drinking each day. That's behind me. The program has put that behind me. It's a program of living 24 hours at a time now. And I live pretty good. This program has made my life happy, joyous, and free. And I remember when I first heard that in meetings, I thought, you people are so full of it. Happy, joyous, and free. Man, I am. I've got a new son, some grandkids. My daughters come around now. They don't leave home at Christmas crying because dad's drunk again. My wife and I don't fight like we used to. Still got our ups and downs, but there's less ups and downs and more level. And again, I can be a decent husband, and I can do the things that I enjoy. Like say, I enjoy playing guitar, writing some music, singing some songs. I go to the God camp. That was a big thing for me, because again, I want to do the things that I enjoy, but without alcohol. And in my mind, how do you do stuff like that? How do you go camping and not drink? Because I drank on the way to the campsite, I drank at the campsite, and I drank on the way home from the campsite. So I didn't know how you do that. But I went to the God camp. That was really important to me. And the first year I went up there and was embraced by everybody, just like everyone else was. What a miracle to me. That was again a moment of God's grace that I could see. I'm having a good time. I'm mixing with people that I normally wouldn't mix with, but we're having a great time. I've gone up there every year except for the COVID year since then, so that'll be like 4 years. Me and another buddy that's in the program, we sit around our campfire. We both play guitar, sing, and people have camped by us and they come around. We made some wonderful friends in the program. Wonderful friends. We meet, some of these people will have a barbecue or a potluck at their home in Murray. We've been doing that for the last couple of summers. And we'll all meet there. Now the group, my buddy and I, and another couple of people have joined in, and it's like a little band. But it's a blast. And I'm doing the things I love because of this program and God's grace. And it's been a good ride. I wouldn't have thought of that. I like I say, I was on the couch drinking myself to death on February 8th, 2017. And as sure as I'm standing here before you, I would have been dead within probably that day. Because I still had liquor, and I was still going to drink it. Don't know, that's just the way it was. But this program of God's grace has removed that from me. The obsession's been lifted. It works if you work it. What a cliche. But truer words have never been said. And like I say, when I got back into the program, I started listening to some of these cliches, and then I look it up in the book. Where is it in the book? And then I've got an old dictionary from 1940, because I want to look up the words in an old contemporary dictionary to when Bill Wilson wrote this book. What does that word mean? Meditation. It talked about meditation. We're supposed to pray and meditate. I couldn't meditate. Meditation to me was kind of the Eastern philosophy. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and so you've got to be a hippie and meditate, I couldn't do it. I listened to the chimes and the waterfalls, and man, I just had to go to the bathroom. I can't do it. So I looked up meditation. Quiet contemplation, usually associated after prayer. Oh, I can do that. So I pray and I have quiet contemplation, think about it, try to be in communication with God as best I can, increase my conscious contact with God, and it works. And anyways, I don't want to just keep rambling. But anyway, the program works. I'm very happy today because of the program, because of God's grace. I meet wonderful people in the meetings. I've traveled around the country. My daughter is a flight attendant, so back before COVID, we'd go to where she was staying, and we would visit with her. And every town I was in, I have the Meeting Finder app on my phone, so no matter where I'm at, I can pull up a meeting. And I've gone to meetings on Skid Row in Seattle and Minneapolis and wherever I'm at. I try to get to a meeting, and it's just like this room. Family. Friends and family everywhere I go. And I like to hear the message from newcomers and people that are old-timers. I like to hear the message because it works. Again, it works if it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed the path. And those are truer words I've never heard. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you all for letting me share with you tonight. It's been wonderful meeting you all. Have a good evening. God bless. Thank you.